January 2023, Istanbul, Turkey. A quiet neighborhood called Zekeriyaköy in the Sarıyer district. Expensive, private, the kind of address where people come to disappear. Turkish special forces and narcotics officers bang on the door of an apartment. Inside, a man who has been living in Turkey since 2011. A man who has been running one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the Southern Hemisphere from a distance of 9,000 kilometers. A man with an Interpol red notice against him, a New Zealand arrest warrant, Australian federal police wanting to talk to him, and a Turkish indictment being prepared with 65 other co-defendants. He calls himself the Negotiator, Bullseye, Chuck Norris, El Mito, the Myth. He was born in Rotorua. He went to high school in Sydney alongside a man who would later become one of Interpol's most wanted. He built a criminal empire worth an estimated $100 million. He directed the importation of hundreds of kilograms of methamphetamine, cocaine, and MDMA into New Zealand, from a luxury life in Istanbul, without ever touching the product. And as of July 2026, he has still not stood trial in New Zealand for any of it. Thank you for watching this right now. We genuinely appreciate you being here. A subscribe costs you nothing and means everything to us. It takes serious time and research to build an investigation like this, and every bit of support keeps us going. That one tap is the reason we keep doing this. Now, let's go back to Rotorua.
Duax Ngakuru was born in Rotorua around 1980. He grew up in Sydney. In that Sydney high school, he sat alongside a classmate named Hakan Ayik. The two boys would grow up to become the most wanted organised crime figures in Australia and New Zealand, respectively. The Facebook gangster and the myth, running an international drug empire from Istanbul together. But that is the end of the story. At the beginning, there is just a New Zealand kid growing up in Western Sydney, finding his way into the Comanchero motorcycle club during the early years of Mick Harvey's presidency, rising through the organisation during a period of violent turf wars with rival gangs. In late 2009, after Harvey's arrest on first-degree murder charges following the Sydney airport brawl that killed a man in front of international travellers, Ngakuru becomes the new Supreme Commander of the Comanchero. He is around 29 years old. He now leads the most powerful outlaw motorcycle club in Australia.
In December 2010, a tattoo parlor he owns in Coogee is bombed. A dispute with the notorious motorcycle club over $25 million worth of Chinese heroin that the Comanchero took from a notorious drug dealer. The bombing tells him something he already knows. Being Supreme Commander in Sydney is not a safe position. In 2011, he and his old school friend Hakan Ayik leave Australia. They go to Turkey. And from Istanbul, they begin building something considerably larger than anything that could have been built from Sydney.
Turkey in 2011 is a different proposition to Turkey in 2026.
No extradition treaty with Australia. A growing economy. A cosmopolitan city in Istanbul that welcomes international business and asks relatively few questions about the source of the capital behind it. Ngakuru and Ayik settle in. Ayik becomes the owner of the King's Cross Hotel, a 13-room boutique property in Istanbul's upscale Levent financial district, a spa, a Japanese restaurant, a business card with the slogan, "Sleep your way to the top." Their social media presence is flamboyant. Luxury yachts, European travel, the kind of lifestyle that announces itself without caring who is watching. Ngakuru is photographed on a yacht in Turkish waters. He calls himself El Mito, the Myth, a man who by that point had been wanted in Australia and New Zealand for years, posting photographs of himself on a yacht in the Mediterranean. He and Ayik are alleged to sit at a round table of organised crime figures controlling major drug smuggling routes spanning South America, Australia, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Hong Kong, South Korea and South Africa. The drug trade, according to Turkish authorities, spans at least 6 continents. And at the Australian and New Zealand end of it,
Ngakuru and Ayik direct operations through encrypted communications, never touching the product, never appearing in the same country as the shipments they allegedly organize.
In 2018, the FBI launches one of the most audacious intelligence operations in law enforcement history, Operation Trojan Shield. They create AN0M, an encrypted communications device, marketed specifically to organized crime figures as the most secure messaging platform available. Every message sent through AN0M, every single one, goes to FBI servers first. For 3 years, the FBI reads the private communications of the world's most dangerous organized crime networks in real time. Ngakuru is one of them. Using aliases including The Negotiator, Bullseye, Chuck Norris, and El Mito, he sends messages through AN0M discussing shipments of 120 kilograms of methamphetamine, 150 kilograms of methamphetamine, a planned importation of 1 ton of cocaine into New Zealand, an alliance with members of the Waikato Mungal mob to distribute product in New Zealand. In May 2021, in a message later seized by New Zealand police, Ngakuru tells Ayik, "The Australian Federal Police must accept that they have lost the war against organised crime." He believes he is secure. He is writing that message into a device monitored by the FBI. Operation Trojan Shield is publicly announced in June 2021. More than 800 arrests across 16 countries. More than 8 tons of drugs seized. Ngakuru and Ayik, despite being among the most significant targets of the intelligence gathered, are still walking free in Istanbul. Senior New Zealand police officers begin talks with Turkish counterparts about extradition. Those talks go nowhere for 2 years. The NZ Herald investigation from December 2021, drawing on documents obtained from the AN0M intelligence, reveals the specific scale of what police allege Ngakuru directed. Law enforcement suspects Ngakuru sent hundreds of kilograms of methamphetamine, cocaine, and MDMA into New Zealand dating back to 2016. His alleged right-hand man believed Ngakuru made more than $100 million from drug dealing. Funds were laundered overseas via gold bars or currency exchanges to Turkey. A single seizure connected to his network, 137.5 kilograms of methamphetamine valued at $20 million wholesale. In New Zealand, more than 1,200 charges were laid against 40 individuals connected to the network. Operation Spyglass, launched from AN0M intelligence, seizes 9 kilograms of methamphetamine, 4 guns, 14 vehicles and motorbikes, and more than $1 million in cash. His cousin, Shane Ngakuru, is arrested in Thailand on charges of being a super facilitator between the Comanchero and Asian crime syndicates. A New Zealand police report defines the term, "A super facilitator has links to a global network of manufacturers and supply and distribution chains to successfully import methamphetamine to New Zealand." The super facilitator is usually based offshore and is never in direct contact with the shipment. That is the precise description of what police allege Duax Ngakuru himself was. Based offshore, never in direct contact with the shipment, directing everything through encrypted messages using aliases borrowed from American action films. 14th of January 2023, Zekeriyaköy, Sarıyer, Istanbul. Turkish police, acting on intelligence and immigration grounds, raid an apartment. Ngakuru is detained. He is handed over to the Provincial Immigration Service for deportation proceedings. The circumstances of his arrest, the specific intelligence that triggered it, the specific charges Turkish authorities move against him, reflect 12 years of a man living just inside the edges of what the Turkish legal system would tolerate. He is not arrested on the serious drug trafficking charges that New Zealand and Australia want to prosecute him on. He is arrested on immigration grounds. The distinction matters enormously. A man arrested on immigration grounds can be deported, can be released pending deportation proceedings, can contest deportation through Turkish courts, and can,
as the Nordic Monitor documented in May 2026, find himself caught in a legal system that has become, in the words of that investigation, a revolving door for drug lords. In October 2023, Turkish police conduct a second major operation, Operation Cage. Hakan Ayik, the Facebook gangster, the school friend, the co-runner of the empire, is arrested. 37 full-patch Comanchero members detained in Istanbul in a single day. Turkey's Minister of Internal Affairs announces it personally on Twitter. In February 2025, Ngakuru is indicted in Turkey as one of 66 suspects for leading an armed criminal organization engaged in international drug trafficking and money laundering between 2019 and the present. He is simultaneously facing charges in New Zealand. The question, as of July 2026, is where he will actually be tried. New Zealand has a warrant for Ngakuru's arrest. Interpol has a red notice, meaning if he crosses an international border, he is to be detained. New Zealand police are seeking extradition from Turkey, but Turkey has its own proceedings against him, a 66-defendant indictment, and Turkey, as the Nordic Monitor investigation from May 2026 documented, has developed a pattern with the specific category of internationally wanted drug traffickers who relocated to Istanbul. Arrests happen, releases happen pending proceedings. Suspects vanish before deportation. The sequence of arrests, releases, vanished suspects, and renewed detentions has intensified questions about how internationally wanted traffickers repeatedly managed to operate inside Turkey despite red notices, foreign extradition requests, and extensive surveillance files. Ngakuru, as of July 2026, remains detained in Turkey. He has not been extradited to New Zealand. He has not been extradited to Australia. And in June 2024, he initiated a civil lawsuit against Turkish journalist Timur Soykan and a Turkish publishing house. The book in question, Barren Invasion, details alleged international mafia activities in Turkey, including Ngakuru's purported role. Ngakuru alleges it damaged his personal honor and dignity. A man facing drug trafficking charges in 2 countries and a 66-defendant criminal indictment in a third, suing a journalist for writing about what the court records say he did. The lawsuit is ongoing. The charges are ongoing. The extradition proceedings are ongoing. He has still not stood trial in New Zealand for any of it. Here is what the full public record of Duax Ngakuru shows, and the questions it cannot answer. Born in Rotorua, grew up in Sydney, rose to Supreme Commander of Australia's most powerful outlaw motorcycle club at 29, fled to Istanbul in 2011, built an estimated $100 million criminal empire from a luxury apartment 9,000 kilometers from the people importing his drugs, was monitored by the FBI for 3 years through a phone he believed was secure, had his private messages read in real time by federal agents while writing that the Australian Federal Police had lost the war, was arrested in Istanbul in January 2023 on immigration grounds, not on the charges New Zealand police have spent a decade building against him, is indicted in Turkey alongside 65 co-defendants, is sued over a book about his alleged criminal activities, has still not stood trial in New Zealand. The first question this raises: when a man can direct the importation of hundreds of kilograms of methamphetamine into New Zealand from Istanbul, using phones he believed were untraceable, and then remain in legal limbo for more than 2 years after his arrest before standing trial anywhere, what does that tell us about the gap between what law enforcement can detect and what the legal system can resolve? The second question is harder. Ngakuru's drugs, alleged by police to have been flowing into New Zealand since 2016, did not disappear into a void. They went into communities, into families, into people who are still living with the consequences of what those shipments produced. While Ngakuru photographs himself on a yacht in the Mediterranean,
while he sues a journalist for writing about him, while extradition proceedings move through Turkish courts at the pace they move. The third question. He went to the same high school as Hakan Ayik. Two boys from the same Sydney school. One becomes the most wanted drug trafficker in Australia. One becomes the supreme commander of the Comancheros. At what point in those school years, if you had been standing in that corridor watching, would you have known what was forming? And if you had known, what could you have done about it? For our community in Aotearoa, this is not an abstract story about criminals in Istanbul. The methamphetamine Ngakuru is alleged to have directed into New Zealand went somewhere. The $100 million went somewhere. The 1,200 charges against 40 individuals in New Zealand, each of those represents a person, a family, a neighborhood that absorbed what a man in a Sarriere apartment directed at them. The lesson is not about Duax Ngakuru. It is about what happens when the systems designed to stop something like this, detection, prosecution, extradition, trial, each work on their own timeline, in their own jurisdiction, at their own pace, and what accumulates in the gaps between them. What do you reckon? When a man can direct a $100 million drug empire from 9,000 kilometers away, get arrested, and still not stand trial 2 years later, what does that tell us about which side is actually winning?